Yeah, that's a really interesting question, and I think I suppose I've been fairly lucky that my challenges have largely been around health, to be honest with you. So I've got endometriosis, and I talk about that quite often on my LinkedIn. And certainly as a younger woman, before my endometriosis was diagnosed, I just was really badly affected by it. I'd be very tired. I wouldn't have lots of energy, and that impacted my work. Mostly, I think, because of the lack of flexible working available to me at that point. And actually, as I got older and as I was diagnosed and knew exactly what was going on, I actually was able to talk much more openly to my employers about what was going on with me, and found that largely they were very receptive. So, Purple Bricks was really the first place that I had the flexibility to just say, actually, today's a bad day for me, so I'm going to work from home. And that meant that there was no loss in productivity. I could just crack on and do all the things I needed to do without being uncomfortable, without having to kind of think, oh, well, I can't go to work today because I need to have a hot water bottle with me at all times, and that doesn't look very professional. So I think, I'm quite a big advocate of flexible working, but not just you can work from home or you can work from the office. Actually, genuine flexible working that takes into account the struggles that people are going through and their own well-being. And I've been learning so much more about that certainly from a female perspective. Older women who are going through the menopause haven't necessarily always had the support that they should have, I think largely because people don't understand what they're going through and what they need. But I think if more workplaces can be a bit more responsive to their employees' needs and actually genuinely support them to feel comfortable and safe at work, then it that can't be a bad thing, really. So I think that's probably been my biggest challenge. In terms of actual customer experience work, I think it's getting long-term buy-in from all of the key stakeholders that you need to be involved. And I've changed my definition of key stakeholders over the years, because I've recognised that if you select a small group of key stakeholders and say, okay, these are the people I need to be engaged, you'll get them engaged, but it still doesn't work because you haven't brought the business with you. So we treat every employee as a key stakeholder in any initiative that we undertake, and we try and bring the whole business along with us from the very beginning. And that's been the biggest learning curve for us, and the thing that we've seen has made such a difference for the long-term success of any project. Yeah, I think that's a really good question, and I think how you implement it is really the key to whether it's successful or not. And I suppose I would dial it back a little bit just to why you need that feedback strategy in the first place. It's really easy to just assume that you know what your customers want, and especially if you've worked in your industry for a long time, then you may well have spoken to lots of customers over lots of years and have a really good sense for exactly what they're expecting from you. But the key thing is that because customer expectations can change so quickly, they change with advancing technology, they change with external factors like COVID. All of a sudden, if you're assuming you know what your customers want, you could be working with out-of-date information. And if you begin a huge change program that's quite expensive, quite costly, based on assumptions, you might well find you get to the end of it and you haven't actually met your customer needs. So feedback's really important for making sure that you are acting on relevant information, you're acting what your customers genuinely want, and that any changes you make are based on real data. The second thing that's really important for a feedback strategy is to recognise that it's more than just asking for feedback. So we will often come across businesses who consider they have a feedback strategy because they send out a survey or they ask for feedback a couple of times a year. But a full feedback strategy is more than just asking the question. It's about what you do with it. It's about who owns the feedback when it comes in, who's responsible for going back to the customer to close the loop, how it's used in your marketing. There are so many elements to a full feedback strategy that can help to progress your business. So getting that to the point where you have it fully planned out is really important before you start following the feedback and knowing what you're doing with it. And then the final thing really is to make sure that you bring the business with you on that journey. It's again about bringing who your key stakeholders are. So it's not just about a couple of people, it's about making sure that everybody in the business understands why you're asking for feedback, what happens with that feedback when it comes in. It shouldn't ever be a stick used to beat people with. If negative feedback comes in, that's really important, and it's really valuable if your business can step away from seeing complaints or negative feedback as a bad thing, and look at, okay, you know what, this is gold dust to us. 91% of unhappy customers will actually leave a brand without ever telling the brand that they were unhappy. They just go. So if you've actually been lucky enough to hear that someone's unhappy, that someone could represent lots more customers, and they're giving you a chance to fix it, to stop you from losing more customers. So it's a really positive thing. But yeah, having everybody in the business understand why you're doing it, what their role in it is, and how they can help you make improvements is really important to looking at the sort of long-term success for feedback strategies. I think it's really about communication. So having that feedback strategy in place allows your customer, hopefully, to be able to feedback at a time and in a way that's convenient to them, which makes it more likely they will give you feedback. That way, if they're saying to you that this is what's important to me, this hasn't gone quite as well as I thought it would, or I'm not happy about this aspect of your service, you can then communicate to them to say, look, we've taken that seriously, we're going to do something about it, this is what we're going to do. And I think, you know, more and more these days we see that the personal touch matters to customers. So giving them the time of day to go back to them and, you know, just thank them for taking time to feed back to you is really important. But equally, empowering them to make decisions that work for them as throughout the course of the service that you're delivering can be really, really powerful. So you don't necessarily need to be talking to them and having that feedback for them to feel valued and like their needs are being met. If you have a really seamless omni-channel experience, for example, and you're offering customers the ability to reach out to you in a way that's convenient to them, whether that's via the phone, via web chat, live chat, chat bots, whether it's via email, and it's very easy and convenient for them to pick the channel that works best for them, but not only just pick that channel, but switch to a different one if they need to. That's a really good way of making them feel valued, because already you're saving them time. You're not putting them on hold for a really long, you know, I had a customer experience myself the other day that was so painful. I was almost kind of in disbelief. I was like, I don't understand how it could be this difficult. But I'd gone through an online application process for something, and then it popped up on the screen and said, actually, to apply for this, you have to phone us. And I was like, oh, well, then why offer the online element? So I picked up the phone and was basically told it's a long wait, but with no idea of how long a wait. It was just, it's a long wait. So I thought, well, I'll just reach out on web chat and just see if they can help as well. So I reached out and they couldn't help. Nor could they tell me how long the wait would be. But the web chat itself, which was technically a live chat, there was a queue of 28 people before I could talk to someone. So it wasn't very instant. It started off with a chatbot, which was not a terrible chatbot, to be fair. And I was able to swap to a live person quite quickly. But then when I sort of said to the person on the chat, well, actually, this isn't going very well, I'd quite like to raise a complaint, they just ended the chat. So I was left just on hold, and it took an hour and a half in the end to get through to someone. And I just thought, you know, this is a really great example of what not to do, how not to look after your customers. If you're going to have omni-channel, it needs to be properly staffed so that your customers aren't kept waiting for a really long time. And that's a fantastic way to make them feel valued. It's a really tough one, actually, because I think it's much easier to be remembered for the bad things. You know, if you speak to a room of people, quite often in the training that we deliver, we'll have a room full of 15 people and we'll ask them to tell us about their best ever customer experience and their worst ever customer experience. And it is amazing. Every single time we do the exercise, so many more people can think of their worst customer experience than can remember a good one. So I think, you know, it isn't always easy to be memorable. And I think that if you want to be remembered for the right reasons, often it will take that extra wow moment. Being just consistent and always there won't necessarily be enough to get them kind of thinking, oh my goodness, you know, this is the brand for me. But equally, if every single time someone contacts you, it's easy, and every single time they go through to you, they know they won't have to wait for ages, they know there'll be a friendly voice at the end of the phone, then that will start to build up in their mind. And eventually it will replace any kind of, negative issues that they've had. They'll just be thinking, well, this is the brand I always know I can trust. If you think about how you feel when you phone certain organizations, I won't mention any, but there are, if you have to achieve, updates to your pensions and things like that, there will be a sinking feeling in your heart if you know you've got to then phone someone, because you think, okay, well, that's my whole morning written off, then I've got to do that. If you can be the opposite of that feeling to someone, if they know, I had to deal with Wayfair the other day, and I was so pleasantly surprised by my whole encounter with them. It was just easy. And as a result, I will keep going back to Wayfair. I will always recommend them, because they just got it. They really understood my issues from the very, very beginning, and they moved heaven and earth to sort them very quickly for me. So I think that's probably a really good way to try and be memorable. But, it takes consistency. And actually, that's where the vast majority of our customer experience change programs with our clients revolve around. A lot of them are doing so many brilliant things already, and they get some great customer experiences really, really right. The people who come to us to say, look, we really want to work on our customer experience, are not normally the ones who are terrible, because the ones who are terrible just don't care. they don't recognize how bad they are. So actually the difference is often, okay, well, how can we move from good customer experiences to consistently great customer experiences? Consistency is key. It's absolutely phenomenal. We started our business just before the pandemic, so we're only sort of 2 years old. And last year, I was ranked third out of a huge list of professionals who I really respect, which was such an achievement for me then. We were only a year into the business at that point. And that essentially our purpose at Think Wow was to bring customer experience to the wider world. We wanted to make customer experience more accessible to smaller businesses who maybe don't have the same budget as the bigger businesses who can invest in great big change programs. So, we work with those big businesses and we do the great big change programs, but we also share an awful lot of information completely free, available for anyone to access, who just maybe doesn't know where to start with customer experience. So I think for us, it feels lovely to actually be recognised for that. And to have businesses say to us that we didn't even really know customer experience was a thing until we started following you. That's essentially helping us achieve that goal of changing the face of UK customer experience, really. So yeah, it feels fantastic, but I think there's also a bit of pressure there as well, because I think where we ranked third last year, anything less than that's going to feel like we sort of slipped down. So I'm a bit nervous about the result, but we'll have to just see what happens.